Hi, my name is Raisa Ankeny, and I am an ESL instructor at the El Paso Community College. This year, the Canadian Association of Second Language Teachers asked us to share some prominent research and to provide some promising technology practices. And one study that really caught my attention was Peter DaCosta's analysis of language anxiety through the lens of the social imaginary. So in second language research, anxiety is defined as a measurable variable that can interfere with acquisition, with retention, and with production of any language. DaCosta notes that this idea doesn't really do anything for the flesh and blood individuals who are really doing their learning. And so he wanted to look at how the social imaginary can affect that. If you're not familiar, the social imaginary entails people's expectations of themselves and of others in any given space. And that tends to be shared by groups. So in other words, the way that we imagine our social existence and how we fit in with others, those expectations that we have are going to be met by the normative notions that fulfill expectations. DaCosta showed in his research that the application of this notion of social imaginary is really going to extend the research on language anxiety because it emphasizes the discursive nature of anxiety construction. So anxiety is a result of structural inequalities that intrude in the classroom and are going to interact with the mediation of meaning. He looked at students in Singapore, particularly immigrant students in Singapore, and he was able to outline how the attitudes of the teachers and students on the scholar's social imaginary were impacting these immigrant students in the classroom. Something he observed in this narrative is that students and the discourse of the program was wrapped up in emotions because language learning is such an emotional experience. And so that shifted through time and through space as the immigrants were attempting to acculturate and demonstrate proficiency. And all that got me to thinking about the relationship between technology use and language learning in my classroom at EPCC. The discourse regarding technology is very reluctant, it's very anxiety-filled, and it's palpable in teachers and students alike. But when my students enter the classroom, they are expected to interact with the technology successfully to learn English. Another thing that is a problem is that our technology isn't readily available. Most classrooms are only equipped with a chalkboard, and the lab is available only once per week as a class. The rest is on the student's time. And of course, add to that the inevitable technology problems that occur. So students and teachers will be quick to tell you that it's just not worth the bother. Eventually, what I have observed is a lot like this analogy of the glass overflowing. Students and teachers have just one more thing after another that's added into their cup. A lot of my students commute to the border, so they have to deal with that daily hassle, along with balancing work and family and dealing with the pressure of succeeding in English. Teachers, of course, have very similar pressures, and so all of this causes a huge anxiety when it comes to figuring out new technology. I started to notice this attitude in the journals that we kept in writing class. If you see here, this student wrote, "I like more writing everything and give to the teacher my work by hand." And this was after I had asked them to turn an essay in on Blackboard. This other student said, "It drives me frustrated, so I know that technology is very helpful, but it is not for me." And this was something that a lot of the students and the teachers feel because they know that technology can help them, but the actual interaction and working with it is so difficult to integrate that they just don't want to handle one more thing. To contend with these issues, I decided to start taking a few pages out of Pacansky-Rox's book on best practices for emerging technologies. And because she provides so many meaningful interactions with the technology that are going to help students learn. But I also wanted to root my idea on Horn and Staker's blended models. Particularly, I was attracted to the Flex model because students are able to use online instruction like through Blackboard, but then also collaborate in class. Now, my model is never going to be truly blended because my students do not have the autonomy of their pace. But my main purpose was to get students to be more independent, to take control over their language acquisition process using technology. And what I did with Blackboard, since we're required to use it, was make tutorial videos to help them navigate. And I also had them download their Blackboard mobile app so they felt they had that access. And I did the same thing with Dyned. With grammar classes, I began including the Khan Academy videos. because Khan is so accessible and it really provides them with a different perspective to learning. And grammar sometimes can be so monotone. So that has worked out really great. It's giving them a different vantage point on things like rules for grammar. Vocab Ahead is a newer program that I began using recently. And this one I really like because it provides video definitions of words. It gives them how to use them in sentences, and it gives me as a teacher the ability to create lists that I want them to use. Voice of America is a news website, but it divides all the articles by proficiency level. And once they are reading, they can also listen along. And afterwards, they choose activities with vocabulary to help their comprehension. So that has been really, really useful. And TED Talks are great because you can choose topics based on interest. And a lot of my students want to go to college, so they're very interested in what TED has to say. Technology has affected my learning in a great way. And later here it says, I can't imagine learning without technology. This is a journal that I actually got last week after I implemented a lot of these strategies. This one says, I am taking Dynit is helpful. It is a program that helps me to improve my comprehension skills. And at the very bottom there, she says, technology changed our life to make it easier. And after seeing these journals, I am feeling very hopeful and very positive. The social imaginary is changing at EPCC. DaCosta concludes his study by inviting a focus on classroom interaction and examinations of discursive contractions. And I believe that the culture of the classroom and the attitudes that are held in any given subject are so powerful. So I agree with DaCosta, and I want to invite educators, leaders, and the ESL community as a whole to adopt approaches that enhance language learning through technology.